Hello, and this time we're looking at what's the difference between a ratio and a proportion. They're not the same thing. First of all, what is a proportion? This is fractions, decimals, or percentages. Those are proportions, and proportions tell you how much of a quantity you have, but compared to the total. Whereas a ratio will tell you how much you have compared to somebody else. And if there's 10 people, well, then you'll need 10 numbers in your ratio in order to sort of say the whole situation. Whereas if you wouldn't know what this first person had in relation to the whole amount unless you put all 10 down. Now, you wouldn't have to put them all down if you just wanted to say, oh, well, he's got 3 for every 2 of this guy has, but there's other people involved, and I'm just looking at these 2, well, then that's fair enough. But if you want to know the total situation, you need to write out everybody. Whereas a proportion, you can say, oh, well, this first guy has got 2 out of 25. Now, I don't know what all the other people have, but I know that the total is 25. So they're doing different things because one is relating a person to everything, and one is relating a person to another person. Or it doesn't need to be people, of course. So you just got to be careful and remember that that if it's a ratio, then the total comes from the total of those numbers in that ratio. Anyway, let's look at these examples because it'll be more obvious with the different examples as we go through them. So 2/9 of the pupils in a school gym club are boys. What is the ratio of boys to girls at the gym club? Well, the 2 at the top is how many boys there are. So that's easy, but remember the 9 is the total, so it's not 2 to 9, it's 2 to 7. Yes, because there'll be 7/9 of girls, so it's 2 to 7, and the total needs to be 9. Okay, part B, we have a 7/11 score of the time he scores that many out of 11 times he shoots at the goal, he scores 7 times. And what is the ratio of goals to missed shots? So we want goals first, and that's the 7, and the whole thing needs to add up to 11, so that's exactly the same as the first one. It's just going to be a 4. The total of these 2 should be the denominator. 1.75 meters tall. Ursula is 20% shorter than Hannah. What is the ratio of Hannah's height to Ursula's height? So Hannah goes first, so we can write down 1.75. So that's fine. And then we want to be 20% shorter. So we'll need a calculator for that. Looks like it's just loading. And I haven't put the pin number in yet, so we'll just keep going with the trial. Okay, so 1.75. We need to make it 20% shorter than Hannah. So if we lose 20%, then we're left with 80%. So times by 0.8, and we've got 1.4, and that's 1.4. Now, technically, you could leave it like that, but it's not really a nice ratio because of the decimals. So we could say 175 to 140, and then we can start cancelling down. And because our calculator cancels fractions down in the same way that we cancel ratios down, well, people do as well, we can cheat and use that and get the numbers 5 and 4, but remember it is a ratio 5 to 4, which is a much nicer ratio than leaving it as 1.75 and 1.1, so best to do that. And it was okay to do that because they were both in meters. So as long as they're both in the same unit, we don't actually put the unit in because it's a relationship. It's sort of saying how many times bigger is this one compared to that one. So we don't put the units in, but they must be the same units, of course. A bow and set of arrows cost that much. So that's bow and arrows. The bow is 1.25 times the price of the arrows. How much did the bow cost? Okay, bit of a tricky one, this one. So that's the total, and we need one side. The bow is 1.25 times the price of the arrows. Well, do we need to have this total cost then? If we know that the bow is 1.25 times the price of the arrows, then, because it wants to know actually, yeah. So as a ratio, we can just write that down. 1.25 for the bow compared to 1 for the arrows. This is, whatever that is, this is 1.25 times bigger. And now we can do a sharing out. So that was sort of an easy example of what we've been doing. And now this is also a sharing out question. If the total price of everything is this, we need to share this amount out in this ratio, which means, and I want the bow, so this is 1.25 out of 2.25 times 40.50. So let's do that. I'm not going to bother making the ratio nice and pleasant because they've not asked for it. I'm just using it, and then I've taken that ratio and turned it into a proportion so I can find out what proportion of the total the bow gets. And my calculator can cope with all the decimals, so there's no point in doing extra work. And write that down and press SD. So the bow has cost £22.5, but I'm going to put the extra 0 on there because it's money, so I really should have 2 decimal places. So hopefully you can see the link between ratios and proportions. The top number is indeed someone's value, but the bottom number of a fraction is the total. And if you just are told the relationship between one thing and another, you can just write that down as a ratio and maybe simplify it if you needed to, but otherwise not. And then you just write them down and cancel it if that's what you've been asked to do. And if it asks for an actual amount, then if it's in money, make sure you write it in the correct form. I'll stop rambling on now, and if you have any questions or comments, you can put them down below. Otherwise, ta-ra for now.